How's it, guys? This is Dayvy FPL and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, it sees the return of the Game Week preview series. We'll be continuing these Game Week previews throughout the season, and this just happens to be the first one. So we're going to be covering everything about blank Game Week 1. We're going to be talking about that Manchester City / Manchester United transfer plan, as well as some one-week punts that also delve into that transfer plan that we do have. Lastly, we'll be closing off with captaincy and also talking about everything you need to know about the new signings that have been confirmed since my new signing video. So if that's something that you're interested in, sit back, relax, and let's get into the video. So a new season calls for a new sponsor, but here on the Dayvy FPL channel, we like our old. So I've brought back the old sponsor, OneFootball, but with a completely new revamped app. Yes, OneFootball has gone over a complete marketing revamp, new logo, new everything. I've checked it out, looks really good. They kind of took the old app, but just made it better. So I'm really appreciative of that. If you want to go check them out, link down in the description below to go download the app. If you don't know who they are, they're the biggest app on iOS and Android, so go check them out. I personally use them, so I can recommend them from a personal level. So the first thing I wanted to cover is there's lots still to come. I'm seeing plenty of drafts happening over on Twitter. Follow me while you're there at Dayvy FPL, but I just want to remind you guys that there's a lot of transfer news, there's a lot of press conference news, and especially listen to those press conferences because of those positive test results. We've seen Mahrez and Laporte recently be tested positive at Man City, so that's not going to be the first, and it's definitely not going to be the last that happens. So just keep your eyes on that injury news as well. We're not only having to deal with injuries now, we have this whole pandemic as well, so just keep your eyes open, whether it be on websites, on Twitter. Twitter's quite a good forum to get, so if you guys don't have a Twitter, I recommend going and getting one, and you can kind of follow accounts that post those injury updates. There's also, as I said, transfer news which we'll be covering on recently about those new transfers that have been confirmed yet, but I can promise you that there's going to be a couple of signings before that Game Week 1 deadline. Unfortunately, the transfer window only closes after a couple of weeks past Game Week 1, so there's still going to be some new signings coming in, but unfortunately we can't really prepare for that. So as I said in a tweet this week, my recommendation would be to just do some research exactly what this video is going to be out, make a transfer plan, but don't do too many drafts until about a couple of days before. Maybe on Friday you can look at my draft video that I'll be producing later on in the week, and you can kind of differ it to your liking, but I wouldn't be making too many drafts now as there's still a lot to happen. So as I said, with the new signings that have been confirmed since I made that best signings video, link down in the description below, we've seen Newcastle do a bit of business. They brought in Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser, both from Bournemouth. I don't really know what's happening with the FPL website. They've got Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser's pictures up already, but they're in two different kits, but both still Bournemouth, but that's a story for another day. So with Newcastle's fixtures, we've spoken about them being a potential side for a budget option consideration, but now with Callum Wilson coming in at 6.5, I definitely do think he overtakes the other 6 million options. We're seeing Mitrovic and also Che Adams fill in at that 6 million price bracket, but I think at 0.5 more, he's definitely worth it. I think that he's going to be the out-and-out striker for Newcastle. Joe Ellington wasn't the best signing last season, so I think they've brought in Callum Wilson here to kind of fill that void of a centre forward attacker, and I think he's going to be a great option. The first two fixtures are nice against West Ham and Brighton. I'll be talking about that West Ham fixture a little bit later on, but then also to cover Ryan Fraser could be a nice option there. I think he's just being overshadowed a little bit by St. Maximum because St. Maximum is 0.5 cheaper at 5.5, but Ryan Fraser could still be a good option. If you remember 2 seasons ago, he was the leading assister, so if he can replicate that form this season, he's going to be a great option and a really nice cheap value option at 6 million. I just wanted to cover these two signings because obviously they were announced after the video, but I do think they're some of the best signings that we've seen this season, mainly because Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser are proven Prem quality. They've both had relatively good seasons over the past two. Ryan Fraser just had that little bit of a niggle at the end of the season and then kind of didn't come back to that Bournemouth side because he was out of contract. But with these two players, I think that I'm definitely going to be taking a punt on at least one of them to kind of combo up with St. Maximum for those opening two fixtures. And now to get onto the main topic of this video, the transfer plan. So I haven't really spoken about my Manchester City, Man United plan that much and what I think about potentially bringing their players in but putting them on the bench. I've spoken in my drafts about what I'm going to personally do, but I just think that that was kind of because when you're building a draft, you should be considering these things, but now we're going to address it as an overall topic. So should you have Manchester United and Manchester City's on your bench? So my personal opinion is I wouldn't go for it. Kind of the argument right now is that they're going to be saving a transfer for Game Week 2. Now, while that could be valuable, the Man United assets and the City assets are quite expensive, and I think you're kind of negating a lot of points in Game Week 1, where there's a couple of teams with really nice fixtures that you could potentially be taking a 1-week punt on instead, and then just simply use your transfer. The other thing that I want to argue against is that I do think the information is worth the price rises, number one, and the transfers. Imagine if Man United get back to training this week, and then suddenly they have a couple of players tested positive. That's going to really ruin your plans. The other option is that we could see the likes of maybe Sancho signing for them, and I think that's going to change the formation quite a bit, and then maybe a player like Greenwood isn't as appetizing. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. I don't think it's worth having these players on the bench. I know you're saving transfers, but I do think that information that we'll be gaining about injuries is definitely worth it from Game Week 1 to Game Week 2's deadline. In terms of the transfer plan for these two players, I'll be first talking about Manchester City. On the left there, you can see their fixtures, starting off with a blank, and then they play Wolves away and Leicester at home. I think most people are going to be bringing a De Bruyne or a Sterling in around Game Week 3 for the likes of Aubameyang, because Aubameyang has a really nice fixture 1 and fixture 2, and then things get a little bit more hairy. Whereas with Manchester City, I personally think they're the most fixture-proof side in the Premier League. Better than Liverpool, better than Chelsea, better than Man United. They just simply don't really have a bad game. Their games kind of sneak up on us. We'll see them probably play a little bit worse against a lower opposition for some reason, which sometimes happens with that Man City consistency, but definitely against a stronger opposition, they usually put up a good fight, and that's why I'm not really worried about that Game Week 7 to Game Week 9 run. They do have Sheffield United and Spurs away, which I think they could do a job against them. And then I think the Liverpool at home game is probably the only tough one there, but it is a home fixture. The rest of the lineups, I think they really could get a lot of goals. It's just kind of hard to predict the best Man City asset to have, and that's why I think most people will go for De Bruyne and Sterling. I do think you can kind of stretch that transfer in to maybe Game Week 4 if you really can't afford them, or maybe don't have the transfers or want to do it on a free transfer with 2. Wolves away is a little bit of a tougher game, as well as Leicester at home, depending on the form that those two clubs are on. I think Game Week 1 will give us a good indication about the Wolves defense and that Leicester defense, and then we can kind of make our moves around that. With Manchester United, I do think that we're going to be bringing them in around Game Week 2. That Crystal Palace at home fixtures just too hard to ignore, and another reason for that is it comes in a game week where there's not too many captaincy options. We do have the captaincy option of Aubameyang, but that's going to heavily rely on how he does in Game Week 1, and then you also have Liverpool playing Chelsea and Man City playing Wolves, and I don't think we're going to be captaining players in any of those two fixtures, whereas why Manchester United come in quite attractive. Predicting which Man United player to get is going to be quite hard. As I said, I would rather have that injury news before Game Week 2's deadline and then make my decision, and that's why I've kind of been a little bit flexible with my drafts currently. I have some premiums in defense, midfield, and attack to maybe downgrade if I want to afford the likes of a Bruno Fernandes or a Martial up front, but I do think with Manchester United's fixtures, there are going to be great options, and I do think we should be targeting Game Week 2. So the next talking point we're going to be going over is 1 week punts. We've spoken about Man City and Manchester United, so who are teams that you should be targeting for transfers out and in, depending on those Manchester United and Manchester City assets? I've highlighted 3 teams here. I've got 3 players as well, but like captaincy, these 3 players are kind of just placeholders. I would target any kind of player from the sides. Obviously, don't attack a CDM or something like that, because those aren't going to be good FPL options, but if you get anyone in that main attack, or maybe even a defensive option, they should be good. So Leicester up front versus West Brom away, a great fixture for Leicester. I'm really hoping that they can kind of pick up the form that they've had in the past couple seasons, or at the beginning of last season where they were challenging for the title, and that's going to make Jamie Vardy and a player like Harvey Barnes even more attractive. So a really good fixture to have. The nice thing about the Leicester assets is that they come in a little bit more expensive than last season, so they can be nice placeholders for those other United and City options. Jamie Vardy up front could easily become a Martial in Game Week 2, and it also gives Vardy a nice fixture in the first game week. The other options are Arsenal, so I've highlighted Saka here because he looks like a good option. We spoke about in my first draft that I was highlighting the likes of Willian and Pepe as a potential punt, but right now I don't know if I'm going to consider them just because they didn't start against Liverpool in that Community Shield, and I do think that Saka probably has a better chance of starting than them. Comes in really nice at a 5.5 price bracket, so a little bit hard to upgrade him, but definitely could be worth that price. They have Fulham away, which is probably one of the best fixtures in the Premier League this season, and I'm expecting Arsenal to do quite well. The nice thing about Arsenal is also have a really nice second game week fixture, so if they do well in Game Week 1, you can simply just keep them for Game Week 2, and hopefully they outperform those other assets. The last option, we spoke about Callum Wilson. I said we're going to be getting back to that West Ham fixture. So recently signed for Newcastle at 6.5 million. I do think hopefully he will start, but just pay attention to that Newcastle press conference later on in the week. But West Ham apparently are in absolute disarray So they had the signing of Diangana, and that has seemed to kind of spur on a lot of tension in the dressing room, and West Ham are not looking in good shape, and I think in the preseason friendlies, defensively they haven't been looking that good as well. So Newcastle could have an absolute field day, and I think if you want to take a nice differential punt on a cheaper, more budget option team, Newcastle's definitely where you should be looking. So the last talking point we're going to be going over is captaincy. Like I said in the 1 week punts, just because I have Mo Salah here doesn't mean he's the only Liverpool option to go by. You could also go for a Sadio Mane, or maybe a more differential punt from Liverpool, but I think Salah and Mane is probably where I'll be keeping it. Then Aubameyang, you could go for other options, but I do think if you're going to be going Arsenal, Aubameyang's probably where it's at. And then I've also highlighted Chelsea here, and I probably would go for Timo Werner if I was going to go for a Chelsea captain. So the first up fixture, Liverpool play Leeds at home, the only home fixture that I have highlighted here from these teams. So I do expect Liverpool to kind of rebound on this poor form that they've been on. Liverpool should be beating Leeds, especially because it is a home fixture. So I'm expecting Salah and Mane to do quite well. Out of those two options, I think currently Mane's a little bit edging it just because of the form he's been in preseason, where Salah has been a little bit quiet. But I do think if Trent Alexander-Arnold starts on that right hand side again, then it's going to make Salah a much better option, because Trent kind of takes a lot of attention away from Salah, and then that kind of allows Salah to have a little bit more breathing room. And then we have Aubameyang, probably the best captaincy option this game week. I definitely think he's going to be one of the most popular. Fulham away, as I said, is a great fixture to go by, and Aubameyang has been in some great form in the preseason, and I'm expecting him to get at least one goal against Fulham. Then you kind of have the differential punt of going for a Chelsea asset like a Timo Werner, who could also be a good option to go by, but I think that's kind of the more out there differential punt, as a lot of people are probably going for the red side of FPL with Salah or Aubameyang. You could also go for the likes of a Jamie Vardy as a more differential punt, and I do think he'll be doing well against West Brom, so that could also be a good option to go by. So that's basically going to wrap up the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please like it if you did, and subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. I'll be checking you guys tomorrow in a preseason guide video, and then I'll be following that up with the final draft, as I'm sure you all are excited for. So if you aren't following me on Twitter already, follow me at Dayvy FPL, and I'll be signing off. This has been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.